Who really started the super teams? Let's talk about it. I was checking out the Truth Lounge with Paul Pierce, who obviously won a ring with the 2008 Celtics, which is recognized as a super team with him, Kevin Garnett, Rajon Rondo, Ray Allen, and them, right? And he was on the Draymond Dream podcast at first. And last week, they briefly went over super teams and their origin. And Draymond claimed that the Celtics in '08 started the domino effect, which led to LeBron James, which led to KD, and what we have right now. And so Paul Pierce, he took to his own podcast on the Truth Lounge, as I said, and he shared his thoughts on what Draymond had to say about the super team era and who actually started it. So we're going to play what Paul Pierce had to say, and then we're going to come back and react and actually look deeper into the history of super teams in the NBA. But before I play the clip, please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
This is how I feel on the real. Like when I see how the other teams did it, based on how we did it, because it wasn't me calling KG or calling Ray Allen like we should play together. Like ours just happened, that was all upstairs. You know what I'm saying? That was all Danny Ainge finessing, going into his bag. The owners figuring out what they're going to do. But they came to me like they want to help. They want me to be here long term, and they want to build a team around me to win a championship. And they felt like I was a key piece to where it's now. When LeBron did it in Miami, that was manufactured. Mine was handmade. You know what I'm saying? You know the difference between handmade and an assembly line? So where it's a difference.
Yeah.
Mine is handmade. It was stitched in. We didn't know which direction we was going. It was like we didn't know what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, we got the worst record. Next thing, we got the fifth pick. Oh, we trade the fifth pick. We end up with Ray Allen. Oh, damn, what else we can do? We got all these young assets. We got Ray Allen in the Paul. Oh, damn, let's flip this. Oh, damn, we can get KG. Bring that over here. Now, when you look at it, LeBron, calling Wade, calling Bosh, like, yo,
we can
what y'all
do
want to
this.
do?
But you don't think that's like, how you feel about this,
The interesting thing
though?
what Draymond said was, we set the blueprint on not only super teams, but we showed that it can work three stars together.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like,
And then they saw that.
All right, so y'all heard it. So let's talk about it. I feel like we should start by defining what is a super team. So the criteria is very subjective, obviously, but I'll give you my criterias. At first, you need 2 top 5, 2 top 10 players in the NBA right now. If there are 2 top 10 players, you need more. But if you just have 2 top 5 players in the league, especially if they are all-time great both, automatically you become a super team, in my opinion. So if you only have 2 top 10 players, you need a good to great third option. And last but not least, you need solid role players and good to great coaching. I really want to emphasize those 2 last points. You need the solid role players to give you some depth and the great coaching. Because if you look at some of the teams that we have right now, we have a lot of big threes. Within the last 5 years, we've had a lot of big threes, but they didn't turn out to anything because they didn't have those role players. If you look at all of the big threes that KD has tried, with the Nets, with Kyrie and James Harden, they had no depth whatsoever. So one injury or one guy underperformed and they were cooked. They didn't have anything. Same with the Suns of this year. They have a hell of a big three, for example, but since they barely have any depth, no one would pick them to win a championship right now. They will always have a shot just off talent alone, but everything has to go right for them to be able to do anything. Same with the coaching. If the coaching is not on point, then you probably won't go places. You need at least a good coach to be able to be a super team, in my opinion. And sometimes you have some cases in some instances when the chemistry is so good and paired with some nice to great talent, it will get you up there. I still won't call these teams super teams, but they kind of play on super team levels. I'll give you 2 examples. The Spurs with Tim Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili, all that era, they weren't a super team per se, just because Tim Duncan was the all-time great. He was the top 10 player. But then I would never say Tony Parker or Manu Ginobili, though they were both great, were top 10 players. But the chemistry was so flawless that they were still an all-time great team. The same can be said about the 73-9 and 2015 Golden State Warriors. I don't think they were a super team per se, because if you look, you only had Stephen Curry, who was a top 5 player. But even at the peak of their powers, Neither Clay or Dre were top 10 players in the league, in my opinion, so they don't really fit my criteria. But again, the chemistry was so flawless on that 73-9 team that with the depth that they had, etc., and the chemistry, the selfishness, the rhythm, the coaching, they were playing on the super team level, but they weren't quite that yet until they got KD, in my opinion. So you got my criteria, so I will repeat them, and then we're going to look at the history. So again, 2 top 5, 2 top 10 players in the NBA, great coaching, solid role players, and a good to great third option. This is what you need to be a super team. So according to my criteria, well, the 08 Celtics, the first one to really start the super team movement? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you look closely, they've been around forever. If you look at most of the top 10 players of all time, they've all been on super teams at some points in their life. You look at the Bill Russell Celtics. You look at the Showtime Lakers with Kareem, Magic Johnson, and James Worthy. You look at the Big Three Celtics with Larry Bird, Parrish, Kevin McHale. You look at Shaq and Kobe. They didn't have that big three, but still, it's 2 arguably top 5 players of all time with some solid role players and an all-time great coach. Absolutely a super team. And I know a lot of people don't like to say this, but in my opinion, the Bulls with Michael Jordan, not before Dennis Rodman, but as soon as they got Dennis Rodman, they became a super team. You look at Michael Jordan, arguably the GOAT, right? Then Scottie Pippen, who was a top 10 player in the league, plus Dennis Rodman, who was the ultimate role player of all time, arguably superstar in his role. He wasn't a superstar player, but definitely a superstar in the role with the rebounding that he brought and the defense. And then you add on all the role players that he had around that and an all-time great coach. That's a super team, in my opinion. So if you look at all the greats, and obviously the LeBron James teams, the Heat, arguably the Cavs, I wouldn't call the Lakers that he has won the championship with a super team, but the Heat most definitely, and arguably the Cavs, right? So if you look at all the all-time greats, top 10 players, most of them have been on super teams at time. And that's throughout history since the very beginning of the game. So the Boston Celtics, they most definitely played a role just because they were kind of the first of their generation to do it. And they broke up an era that was pretty enjoyable and one of the greatest era in basketball, in my opinion, which was the early 2000s. And what was so great about that era is that, first of all, the physical quality was still there. The skill set had improved overall a little bit. And it was the mono superstar era. Like if you look at the scope of the league, you had LeBron James, who was by himself on the Cavs. You had Kobe, who was pretty much by himself on the Lakers until he got Powell. But Powell wasn't, an overwhelming second option still. So Kobe's Lakers. You had Dwayne Wade on the Heat. You had Dirk on the Mavs. You had T-Mac on the Magic. You had Melo at first on the Nuggets and then on the Knicks. You had Paul Pierce on the Celtics. You had KG on the Wolves, and I can keep going. So the balance was tremendous, and every night you would have one key matchup that would have to go at it, and whomever had the best superstar would win the game pretty much. And the Celtics, they came and they kind of shut down that era, and they stacked up the deck, right? So what's the big difference between those super teams, all the super teams in history, not to name obviously the superstars who tried to team up, the Scottie Pippen, Charles Barkley, and Hakeem Olajuwon. I know it was past the prime, but they tried it, didn't work. Or Kobe, Shaq, Karl Malone, and Gary Payton tried it, didn't work. But so what's the difference between all those teams post LeBron James Heat and the teams after LeBron James on the Heat? What's the difference between those super teams, right? And I think Paul Pierce kind of nailed it when he said that the big difference is that before that, most of those teams, not all of them, were manufactured in the headquarters. It was the GMs doing their job compared to LeBron James, who just picked up the phone and figured it out, right? So that's the big difference. And then that opened up the floodgates for the Kevin Durant of the world, who kind of took the button and completely ran away with it. Like he sprinted on some Usain Bolt type stuff with the bat and created the ultimate super team, right? And now what we have, which is, this is where the NBA kind of loses me, is when now you have players who are on contract, supermax contract, 4 to 5 years contract, and they'll request a trade to a top team because they're not happy, right? I don't like that. So what's the big difference? Yeah, again, LeBron James got on the phone. So now how do I feel about super teams and about superstars teaming up? About super teams, I feel like you can't be mad when it's just the organization doing their job, right? Which is damn near everyone before LeBron James. So you can't blame a player for just being there when the GM was like, okay, let me be the best GM ever. Let me go grab Shaq, trade him to the Lakers. Then you get to draft Kobe. You put him together, and yeah, that's arguably the greatest duo ever. Or you can't be mad when Michael Jordan was on the Bulls and then Jerry Krause was like, okay, Scottie Pippen, then all right, Dennis Rodman, then Phil Jackson. You can't be mad at them for that. They were just there, you know. Same with the Lakers, Showtime Lakers, all that stuff. However, when it comes to the LeBron James kind of super team, which I made up, here's how I feel about them. I definitely do not love it, but I'm not mad at it when it's, first of all, when you're a free agent, you can't break your contract. If you decide that it was good enough to be on the team, take $200 million plus for them for 5 years, and then you come across some adversity, and then you wake up and you be like, oh yeah, trade me to a contender. I don't rock with that. So all that James Harden stuff, Anthony Davis too, Ben Simmons, I don't rock with that. But yeah, so you have to finish your contract. That's first. Second, I feel like if you're going to team up, not to stack up the talent, but to kind of balance out compared to what's out there, I'm not mad at it. Here's an example. LeBron James, if you look at him when he was on the Cavs, his history was what? Multiple time MVPs, performed in the playoffs at that point until that series against Dallas. He was putting up numbers in the playoffs, was able to carry his squad in 2007 to the finals when he had no business of being there, and he got swept. And then he would keep, knocking his head against the Celtics were just way too much for just one guy, So I understand why LeBron James would be like, all right, man, I know how great I am. I know what I can be. I know what my legacy can be with a championship, but I'm not winning the championship if I just stay on the Cavs and I don't get no talent. So the people would just remember me as a wannabe champion and never as a champion. So let me team up and get my squads, and now I can compete with the Celtics. Now I can compete with the Spurs. So I'm not mad at that. I felt like the Heat were definitely super talented, more talented than the Celtics and the Spurs, but it wasn't by so much that it killed competition. So again, I don't love it, but I get it. The big difference with a guy like KD, for example, and this is when I was like, yeah, this is too far, is that KD already had enough to compete. He never won a championship up to that point. But him and Russell Westbrook and Charles Ibaka, Steven Adams, and you can keep going, right? They were good enough to be up 3-1 on a 73-9 championship team. Had they not choked, they would have went to the finals, and you never know what happens. So clearly, KD was good enough with his squad, and he decided not only to leave but to join a 73-9 team. And then they completely killed competition. If you just saw the way they ran through the league, like when you started the season, you already knew they would win barring any injury. And this is when I don't like it, So the LeBron James, again, I don't love it. I would never be like, oh yeah, I like the fact that LeBron James picked up the phone and formed his team. But this is why, in my opinion, his case is not that bad. It's not legacy damaging, in my opinion. Now, depending on whom you're talking to, they'll be like, yeah, LeBron James is teamed up, so therefore he's disqualified for all those conversations these guys will put him in. But yeah, in my opinion, no. No, he's not disqualified over that. If you want to disqualify him because he lost a lot, if you want to disqualify him with, 2011, you get no argument from me. That's your perspective. But the Miami thing, I don't think that should disqualify him, in my opinion. So anyways, these are my thoughts about the whole Super Teams thing, man. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. And more importantly, let's have that conversation in the comment section. What is your feeling about the super team? Do you think that the Celtics were, in fact, the one that started it? If it's not the Celtics, drop in the comment section who actually started the super teams. And let's talk about it. What is a quote-unquote acceptable super team and what is something that's unacceptable? And yeah, let's have the conversation. Let's have fun in the comment section. It's been your boy, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.